Power on.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Technica podcast feed.
It's TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast.
Ooh, the man of tomorrow is here for you, the Golden Stallion, ready for some TIE Fighter Renegades, and I am overcome, not with the Force, but with something, because I am not alone this time. I am being joined by none other than my brother, Robin Freebeard. Rob, man, welcome back to TIE Fighter Renegades, baby.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, you know, I've been doing some solo episodes recently, just covering kind of episode by episode. We had some fans request, like, more episode by episode or something in that timber,
Right.
reviews of the shows. And so, you know, I was kind of getting that out. But I kept telling everybody in those episodes, I said, don't worry, Rob's going to be on, and we're going to do a whole season overview. And we're going to talk about this beast. Even though we reviewed 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
Parts
we did.
1, 2, and 3.
That's
together.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, our original intention was to do every episode, but, you know, unfortunately, just life gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And, yeah, okay, so we're talking about Star Wars Ahsoka, of course. And this was a show, I mean, let's just open this up. One of the weird things about this was, now, I mean, the marketing was clever in calling it, what was it, Tano Tuesday, right? Like Taco Tuesday.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on social media, it would always be hashtag Tano Tuesday. And I was like, oh, that's clever. And that's probably why, because originally this series was supposed to premiere and air new episodes on Wednesdays. But then they switched it to Tuesdays for the Tano Tuesday thing,
Yeah.
which that's fine marketing. I have no problem with that. What I did think was weird was that they wouldn't release it until 9 p.m. on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I get what they're trying to do here. Disney is trying to bring back that must-see TV feeling,
Exactly.
right?
I was just going to say they were trying to bring back sort of like the legacy format, or at least the feeling of it.
Yeah. For varying reasons, and I think we can talk about this a little bit more now that the show, or at least the first season, we're going to talk about that. Does that mean there's a second season? We'll see. But, yeah, I feel like, you know, now that this is all said and done, we can get into this point about it. This is another scenario, and I appreciate it that they called them not episodes, but they called them parts. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, Part 5, Part 6, 7, and 8, right?
Right.
Because this should have been a movie, straight up. Just like Obi-Wan, I think this should have been a movie. I think anybody's real problems with pacing and some of these a lot of the criticisms that have been, there's criticisms that I think are valid. And we're going to get into those, all right? I don't think this is all sunshine and rainbows.
Right.
But I do think one of the biggest issues, and we've talked about this in the past, is the streaming shows are really, they're made like movies. And, in fact, most of the time, they're even bringing in movie directors, not TV directors, which is a very different beast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're bringing in movie directors.
Although that line has been getting more blurred ever since streaming started.
It is. But at the same time, I still think it comes down to where, and it's part of the reason that seasons of shows have gone from, 22 to 24 season or episodes per season, like you'd imagine with Stargate, or with, the next Star Trek, The Next Generation, and so on. Why they've shrunk so much, part of the reason I think they've shrunk so much is because now they are made like movies. In fact, I think even the production, it's not just the production value, but the production schedule and all that is done like movies. And you feel it. And this is another show where I think I felt it.
I could completely agree. In fact, I was going to say, like, this is like, it's not the first time this has happened, but this has been the most pronounced time where it's happened, where I'm like, this whole 10 or 8 episode seasons are a problem.
Yes.
They're not enough.
Yeah, and I don't think even, binge watching isn't necessarily even the resolution. Like,
no.
I think these things should just be movies. And you and I have talked separately, off mic, in the past about how, there's things in these shows, in Ahsoka in particular, where, like, okay, you didn't have to show us that. Like, you could have just told us that.
Yeah.
We didn't have to have this, and in fact, because we were really saying you could have spent the time better doing other things, showing us other things.
Right. Well, I mean, I could go either way. Like, yes, this season of Ahsoka could have been a movie. Mm-hmm. I could also go the other way and say if I had to choose between a movie or 22 or 24 episode season, I think I might go with the 24 episodes. Like, either do a lot or make it really dense and make it like a movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think another issue here is this is how you can justify the budget for these things, is by having them be on a tighter schedule.
That's what it's all about, absolutely.
Yeah, because, in the old days, as it were, and I didn't learn about this until, thank you, physical discs. I watched so many specials about how Star Trek was made over its, massive 20-year run there in the 90s and early aughts. But they would talk about how, the reason we would do two-parter episodes is so that we could take the budget we'd have the budget of 2 episodes for one story. And that's why you would do that. And I think that's also a big part of what's going on here is that, we only have, 80 million or something to make. We can't make 20 episodes out of 80 million. So we're going to have to make it 8 episodes, and that's the money that we've got.
Have you been watching that series on Amazon, The Center Seat?
I have not, no.
Okay. Yeah.
I do have the Blu-ray, though.
Okay.
That's a Star Trek series, right?
Yeah. It's a documentary about the making of actually all of the Star Trek shows.
Yeah. Shout Factory, I think it was, came out with the Blu-rays.
And
I got them.
Gates McFadden is kind of like the the person who's doing the voiceover and everything.
Dynamite. She's amazing.
She is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I was wondering that because I'm actually in the middle of watching that right now. I'm really enjoying it.
Okay. Well, we'll review it because I will get to watching that at some point. But yeah, I imagine that's going to provide some color on that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be clear here. Star Trek was the gold standard of television science fiction and how to make it. And I think anytime,
it wasn't just the gold standard, but it was like the only standard. I mean,
for a long time.
It set the standard.
Yes.
From the beginning.
Yes. For a very, very long time.
Yeah. Because before then, what you got mostly in science fiction were, serials that would play in front of a movie.
Yeah, right. No, you're totally right. Certainly when the original series came out, that just brought everything up to 10. It made science fiction television viable as to where before it was not.
Yep.
You're completely right about that. And
it was a huge risk at the time.
Yes.
I mean, Lucille Ball pretty much put everything on the line to make it happen, and she didn't even really make any money off of it.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, we absolutely have her to thank. For that. In fact, like your point is, we don't only have her to thank for Star Trek, as a whole, really, but also science fiction television, and by proxy, we have her to thank for Ahsoka.
We wouldn't have Babylon 5.
I can't imagine that world.
Yeah, we wouldn't have The Expanse.
Right. Yeah, all
like arguably, I could even say within the last 20 years, some of the best science fiction television has been on TV and not in movies.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. Though I'll say this, getting back to, Ahsoka, not only do I think this was made like a film, I think this should have been put in theaters.
Well, it was. It was. For some episodes, yeah. They had very select showings.
Okay.
And, you had to basically be at your computer pressing F5 to get tickets. To get the tickets, yeah. Because they were gone like that.
Yeah, okay. So, this kind of thing happens. This used to be a deal with Doctor Who, where some episodes would be in theaters in New York City and everything. I remember these days. So, well, all the same, and this is, I guess, to kind of kick off our review, my feeling is up until part 7 and 8, I want to refrain from saying episode 7 and 8 because episode is a term that's very particular in the Star Wars fandom, right? You don't want to use that too flippantly because when you say episode 1, that means something completely different.
Right,
to people.
Right. I mean, technically, you can't even talk about new episodes of Star Wars because Disney has decided that's done with.
Right. The sad part is, and here's kind of kicking off the review. I think this should have been the movie that we got. This should have been episode 7. This should have been.
Oh, for sure. This
is the true follow-up to Return of the Jedi.
Yes.
In every way.
Yes.
I know some of the criticisms are that you had to have people felt like you had to have some knowledge of previous works to do this, and I can kind of agree with that. We'll get into some of those criticisms, I think, because like, why should anybody care about Thrawn? I don't think the show gave people any reason to be worried about Thrawn.
There's something definitely to be said about, Thrawn's depiction in this series.
Yeah.
I would say it's even a step down from his appearance in Rebels.
Right. No, I concur with that. But that's the thing is, people, like, this show did nothing to explain to people why you should give a shit about this guy.
Right.
I would even argue that Rebels gave you more, but it gave you very little reason to give a shit.
Yeah, exactly. It was nowhere up to, the original Thrawn trilogy.
Right. Now, you could say, okay, maybe you could get away with it, and why? Because, when you look at the Star Wars Celebration from the year before Rebels Season 3, when Thrawn was introduced into the new canon, the reaction when you saw him in the trailer at Star Wars Celebration, I mean, you can go watch videos of that. Like, I haven't heard a pop like that since Stone Cold Steve Austin came out in a WWE ring. I mean, people were screaming. I was pretty sure there were bras and male panties getting tossed onto the stage when Thrawn came out.
The only thing that I can think that comes close to that was when I got to see the teaser trailer for The Force Awakens at Celebration, and it ends with Han saying to Chewie, Chewie, we're home.
Yeah,
which that was like. At the time, we didn't know the movie was going to be shit.
Right.
But at the time, that was like as close I could say as I've ever come to a religious experience.
Yeah, right. No, totally. And I know the reaction for seeing Thrawn to be in Rebels Season 3, which Rebels was kind of the premier Star Wars property at the time. People might forget that. That was a huge pop. And so I could see where Filoni could say, no, look at how these people reacted. They know who Thrawn is. We don't have to. We introduced him to people. They don't need to know. When that's not true. And I would even go so far, as great as Timothy Zahn's 6 books have been that are in the new canon that cover Thrawn specifically, you still don't get that essence like the original Heir to the Empire trilogy.
It's funny you mentioned that, because this week I actually watched an interview with Timothy Zahn regarding his thoughts on Ahsoka. And,
that had to be gold. I'll have to watch that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think he's seen it yet.
Oh, okay.
But he was definitely able to talk about, his thoughts on Rebels.
Yeah.
And how Thrawn is depicted here. So, unfortunately, I guess even Timothy Zahn doesn't quite get Thrawn the way we do anymore, because his opinion was that Filoni totally gets the character, and it's totally consistent with his thoughts on Thrawn.
Yeah, I'm just shaking my head here.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you, but I do have to give voice to the author that created him.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, credit where it's due. Filoni and Favreau both conversed with Zahn, saying, "Hey, are we getting this right?"
Right.
And thank you for doing that, of course. Fuck. I mean, Zahn's such a great writer. And again, me personally, and this is just my opinion, I'm speaking for myself completely, I've come right out and said on this show, I've said that I think Timothy Zahn made Star Wars great. Not even George Lucas.
Yeah.
And maybe Zahn doesn't even get the narrative that he put out there. Again, it's Sherlock Holmes in space. That's all he is.
Here again, there was something else that was weird during this interview.
Okay.
I mean, I don't get the impression that Zahn is really a Star Wars sweaty like we are.
Probably not.
Because he's throwing out ideas for pitches in regards to stories he would want to do with Snoke in the unknown regions.
Wow.
And I'm and he's talking about his ways. Wait, does he not understand that Snoke is just Palpatine?
Yeah, right.
Does he not know that?
Right. Admittedly, the language around all that is very confusing. But I'm with you. All right, quick side tangent, because you raised an interesting point. Okay. Let me ask you this. What are the 2 best shows, live action shows, that Disney has put out in their tenure for Star Wars?
Andor and Andor?
Or Andor and Ahsoka, right? Or Andor and Andor, yeah. No, okay, that's fair. I would say it's Andor and Ahsoka.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian were great, too. I mean, I put Ahsoka about where I put, season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah. Well, your first answer is actually perfect. So Andor and Andor. All right, let's just say what's the best show they've done? It's Andor.
Yeah,
and most Star Wars fans,
down.
I think, would agree. Yes.
Yeah, like it's
Right.
not even close.
Right. Okay, so here's the weird-ass thing. You have, like, if Zahn doesn't really know Star Wars, I mean, he had to invent half of it
Yeah.
back in the day. Him and West End.
Well, I was going to say, like he got most of his information from the West End role-playing game.
Right. And everything else he basically had to make
And the
up.
stuff that he was getting, like, it was like the first edition, which was only a few books at the time.
Yeah. I mean, he even sort of had to make up what the Clone Wars were because, look, folks, George Lucas didn't fucking know.
No.
He had no idea what the Clone Wars were. And we know that for multiple reasons. And that's fine. He changed
And I can tell you that, like, from at the time, back, in the 90s, I recall that what Zahn thought the Clone Wars were was what we all thought the Clone Wars was.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's not even, say, what Kenner originally was going to make the Clone Wars be, right? With, was it Anzadi Prime or no? I can't think of the guy's name. They were going to have the Epic Continues. That storyline,
right.
Which basically the Clone Wars was going to come back.
Right.
Which they took some of
they took some of the designs for those and used them in Dark Empire.
Yes, for like the Sovereign Protectors and everything else. Yeah. So, but here's the funny thing. All right, so let's run with your premise that Zahn might not know Star Wars that well. The scary part for me is that the best people that have made Star Wars are people who don't know Star Wars. That includes Tony Gilroy.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, and I can, when I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Yep.
Okay, and because I thought it was bullshit that they had Tony Gilroy come in and take over for Gareth Edwards, on Rogue One and do rewrites and everything.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, holy shit, am I so glad that Tony Gilroy came into Star Wars.
Right. I mean, I will say that my biggest problem with Gilroy wasn't that he was brought on and that he wasn't a Star Wars fan. It was more the attitude.
Yes.
And for us, attitude is everything.
Oh yeah, no, totally.
So like he just came off the wrong way.
Yes, came off as a dick. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe he is a dick. You don't have to be a nice person to be a good Star Wars writer.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. You don't have to be. As someone who is friends with Harlan Ellison, let me tell you, to be a great writer, you don't have to be a nice guy.
No.
Yes, I'm with you on that, and you can still love the people too.
Right, so. Exactly. Yeah. So and I'm willing to give everybody a second chance.
Yes, absolutely. So that's interesting, and it really proves what Star Wars is. It's just the ultimate sandbox. And there's some points that even in my solo reviews that I've done so far of Ahsoka that I haven't gotten into that I'm kind of curious to get your takes on, because I think there's a lot of pull in from other franchises, other sagas that are not Star Wars in this show. Very deliberate, some of which we're not surprised by, say Lord of the Rings. Others, I think, have been going on since the beginning of The Mandalorian, and we'll talk about that.
I want to come back to something you just said, though.
Please.
And that's saying that Star Wars is the ultimate sandbox. Because I've seen the criticism lately, and I don't understand it. And that people's complaint seems to be like, oh, well, Filoni and Favreau's Star Wars seems to be like them just getting together and mashing action figures together. And I'm like,
great, that's what we've been doing this whole time.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, have you not watched Star Wars? Do you not get it?
This is why we all bought 3 1/4, action figures.
Yeah,
from every
That's
franchise.
why the action figures were sold out before they even hit the shelves.
Yes, it's exactly what you do. That is how you make Star Wars, is you mash action figures together. Anyway, okay, so these are people who did not live during the dark times, which Zahn saved us from.
Right.
And Thrawn saved us from. So, okay. But it's an interesting point to bring up, that maybe what Star Wars really needs to be great, truly, truly great, like Andor, and like the original Heir to the Empire trilogy was, which I don't think anybody would argue, okay, if you asked what are the greatest Star Wars books ever written, or even just one of them, Heir to the Empire would come at the top of every list. If it included the old EU and the new canon, it doesn't matter. That's going to come up at the top of the list for every single human being. And somebody says differently, they're lying,
right?
Or they've just never read a book,
right?
So it does make you wonder: is that maybe this really does need fresh blood? At a lot of points.
I agree with you, but at the same time, I think it also still needs a strong central vision.
Yes. Yeah. No, you need a plan. Totally.
Yeah. And yes. I think Filoni provides that in spades.
Yes. Yeah, what he lacks perhaps in writing or perhaps in directing or something like that. I'm not necessarily saying he's bad at those either.
Well, I mean, whether or not he's good or bad at it is kind of irrelevant in my opinion, because he's still new at it.
Yes.
He is great at directing animated, but the production process for animation and live action are completely different beasts.
Yes, just like we were talking about with movies earlier.
Right.
It's a very different situation.
But it's even more different than the difference between television and movies.
Right. But take all that aside, as long as you have a vision, you can get away with it. You mentioned Babylon 5 earlier. It's easy to say and watch that show now that originally aired in the 90s and look at it and go, wow, that acting was rough. Ooh, that dialogue. Oh, those effects. Oh, this. It doesn't fucking matter. The vision was so on point that at the end of the ride, you're just like, oh, yo, that was amazing. And it's all because of that vision. Vision's everything. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Like having a plan, having a set plan, beginning, middle, end, the whole thing. That's what matters. Okay, yeah. So that's a good point to bring up on that. So my, again, starting off kind of our thoughts, overall thoughts of Ahsoka. My point was, this is really the movie we should have gotten. Like this should have been the direct follow-up to Return of the Jedi. It should not have been whatever the hell, was done with the sequel trilogy. That's not to say that this was perfect. It was not perfect. But a lot of what was done within it really was. And so if you had kind of a broad overview of your thoughts, I mean, I can't think of a greater compliment I could give to something than to say, this should have been the follow-up to Return of the Jedi. How much, what grander could I say about something?
Yeah, and
how about you?
The second biggest compliment, which I can give, is if we don't get a season 2, we riot.
You messaged me with that. I was like, yeah, all right, you're right. Yeah, I mean, and I guess we could talk about that for a second. We're, without a doubt, you were going to wait at least 2 years because of the strikes and everything to see a potential season 2. And it is still somewhat in the air if we're going to see that.
Yeah.
I brought up in the last TIE Fighter Renegades, I had mentioned how on social media, people freaked the fuck out because when the last episode, when Part 8 was going to air, they did that post that said, or Disney, both the official Star Wars Instagram account and the official Ahsoka Instagram account, both use the same language, and they said the series finale. And everybody on Instagram was messaging saying, or commenting on it saying, what do you mean series finale? Like, what the fuck?
Right.
And but then a few hours later they said season finale in another post, and so that implies that there's going to be a season 2.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? Disney could be in trouble and it might not happen.
Well, I think there's a number of different possibilities here.
Sure.
One, yes, it could be in trouble, and I've even talked to you privately, like we've discussed whether or not the fact that they haven't announced a second season is further fuel to the fire of whether or not Disney is trying to offload Star Wars.
Yeah, they want to sell it, which we talked about last time.
Because there's a big contrast here between Ahsoka and, let's say, The Mandalorian or Andor, which got season renewals before the season was even over yet. The current season was over yet.
Oh, hell, Andor had gotten the season 2 before the show premiered.
That's right. Yeah, right. Exactly. yeah, right. So yeah, like it's kind of hard not to take note of that. Is like, well, what's taken so long for you guys to make up your mind?
Yeah. Because
overall, the response from the fans, to me, has been for the most part positive.
Yes.
Even if
for the most part.
Yeah. Even if there are some complaints, it's like overall, this is the best thing that they've done since Andor.
Right. And you would agree with that statement?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Same.
Yeah,
Same.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly better than season 3 of Mandalorian. So
yes, yeah. which again, we'll reiterate, was great until the end. They did not stick the landing.
Right.
But unlike other people who just think the season 3 of Mandalorian was terrible. No, you and I were loving it until literally the last episode, and they fucked everything up.
Yep.
And I mean, give me your take on this, Rob. I feel this kind of the same way with Ahsoka.
It's not as bad, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not as bad. It wasn't as like left turn as it was with season 3 of Mando. But this show was fucking amazing all the way up until part 7 and 8. Part 7 and 8, I feel like it fell apart.
Yeah, and before we dive into that, I do want to go into, like I said, I think there are a number of possibilities with what's going on here. I think maybe originally it was planned to only have one season.
Okay.
And I think there's definitely a possibility that the death of Ray Stevenson changed plans.
Okay.
I have a strong suspicion because of the way things went down in the last 2 episodes and how little we saw Baylan that maybe they decided to rewrite, re-edit, do reshoots, whatever, and they cut back on his role so that they'd have footage of him in another season.
Right. To save.
To use. Right. Kind of how like they, posthumously used, footage of Carrie Fisher for episode 9.
Which turned out terrible.
Right. And you would hope that they learned from that, and I hope that's not what they do, and I do hope they recast. But I also acknowledge that that's a tall order.
I agree.
I can only think of like 2 people, and I don't know that Disney can afford either one of them.
Give me names.
Russell Crowe and and Gerard Butler.
Yep. Gerard Butler, he's doing made-for-TV shit. But direct-to-video, I should say. He's awesome though.
Yeah,
I'm 100% with you on that.
He was primarily like a movie actor up until recently.
Yeah. No, I hadn't even thought of that. I think both of those are phenomenal. Like Russell Crowe can do no wrong. Like let's be honest about that.
Yeah, and he's got the poise and the demeanor. I mean, you really could just replace, Baylan Skoll with, Maximus Meridius Decimus.
Yeah. Or just imagine, Russell Crowe when he played Jor-El. And, it's a perfect fit.
Right, it is. Absolutely, yeah. But here again, I don't know if they can afford him.
Yeah. But I think Gerard Butler would be a phenomenal choice. The other option that you could do, and I was thinking about this earlier today, the other option you could do is, okay, so we have all this supposedly, emphasis on supposedly, we have all this supposedly amazing AI. Just fucking put Baylan in a mask and like Revan and leave him in it and just do your AI magic with his voice.
I think that's really complicated, especially what's going on in Hollywood right now.
Well, that's part of the strike thing is AI and residuals.
Right, yeah. And there is precedent for that because, James Earl Jones made a deal for Disney to use his voice as Darth Vader in perpetuity to be synthesized.
Right, exactly.
And I really hope that he got a sweetheart deal out of that.
Yes.
And has enough to take care of him for the rest of his life, no matter what happens to him.
Yes. May his children be rich for 7 generations.
Exactly. Right.
100%.
Yeah. And because that's what he deserves for that.
Yeah. Totally.
I think that was just here again. They couldn't pay him enough for what he did.
Yep. I completely agree. Just a top-notch, top-notch actor and honestly top-notch human being. So, okay. See, but that's the thing. Star Wars is already blazing the trail. Like, if you can do that with Vader, I don't know. I'm with you. I'd much rather see Gerard Butler or Russell Crowe, or someone. Just have someone else come in and take over on this story. And so, would you agree? And it's a great point to bring up. Would you agree that this show fell apart at 7 and 8?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I didn't not in the way that Mandalorian did.
No, right.
But it certainly did not meet what we are expecting, given the strengths of all the episodes that came prior.
Yes, and basically what we know of the characters. That includes Ezra. That includes and even the hints and the glimpses that we're giving into Baylan and Shin and all this. Like there was just more expected.
We got no payoff on any of that.
Yeah. Okay, so. And I've said this before, I want to say it again. Just because we didn't get what we expected or wanted doesn't make something bad. However,
exactly.
Okay, so that's true. That's a true statement, and that's why ultimately I'm going to say this all didn't suck. All
yes.
Right? But at the same time, how this show should have ended, the very last shot should have been Republic frigates. Republicans can get... I won't say that. No comments about turbo lasers with that, but it should have been New Republic frigates, blown the fuck away in pieces, And the Chimera, commanded by Thrawn, just flying by them all after he kicked all their asses. And then, boom, just fade to black.
Yeah.
Like, that should have been the end shot of this show.
Yep.
And have everybody go, holy hell, who is this guy?
Right.
And that is not how it ended. And in fact, how it did end...
And, like, you even kind of got the hint that that's what was coming, given, like, the last scene we see with Hera and Mon Mothma together.
Right.
You got the sense that shit was about to get real.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think and this is what you're hinting at earlier with Balin, the idea that they might have had to change a lot of where the show was going to go, I think it lends a lot of credibility to that. I don't know. Like, if Filoni really does understand these characters, just something was wrong with these last 2 episodes.
Yeah,
or 2 parts.
Yeah, I mean, there's other signs, too, because you look at, Rosario Dawson's physical performance from when she did The Mandalorian and even earlier episodes, like her fight with Balin Skull, I think it was like episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
Much stronger than her performance in the last episode. In fact, I would say, like, all of the lightsaber fights, especially the one with the Stormtrooper battle, she just came off as really stiff and wooden.
Right.
Like, this was a rush job, and she simply didn't have enough time to choreograph the fights and for her to get comfortable. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I think you're probably right. You're probably right. Because in this, I kind of came to realize this as I was watching it more. Like, Rosario, all right, let's be clear here. Rosario Dawson is awesome as Ahsoka, overall. And she's a tremendous actor. I mean, just a tremendous actress.
Yeah.
I mean, she's really top
to be fair, I mean, I have had my complaints about her earlier in the season, too.
Yeah, sure.
Because there's a huge difference between this character and the character that we knew in the Clone Wars and Rebels.
Yeah, and in Mando season 3 as well.
Right, but there's also a good, 10 years in between that, too.
Right. Yeah, so... But here's the thing. Like, a part of me, after rewatching some of these lightsaber battles and everything, I'm looking at it and I'm going, is she actually that good at this? Because... Or is Ray Stevenson and the gal playing Morgana, who she's a professional stunt woman, by the way, which is partly why she does, she looks so legit.
Yeah. Well, her dad was a student of Bruce Lee.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger.
Yeah.
And also Hayden Christensen. I mean, any of us that have been Star Wars sweaties for the past 20 plus years, we've watched all the making specials. And we've seen just how good him and Ewan McGregor are. I mean, they became masters. Like Nick Hallam? Was that
Nick Gallard.
Or Gallard, that's it. Who trained them. I mean, this guy's a total badass.
Yeah. But they had tons of time to choreograph those fights.
Sure.
Is what I'm...
Yeah, they had years.
Literally.
Yes, yeah. But they also, I think they became great swordsmen in that amount of time.
Yeah.
To where they could improvise.
Right.
Because, boy, watching and I want to get your thoughts on this as well, but watching the fight in the World Between Worlds between Anakin and Ahsoka, I look at it now and I'm like, boy, Hayden Christensen's carrying that fight. I mean, he's carrying that all the way. And I hate to say it because I think Rosario Dawson's awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's age. We talked about this earlier. Because at first I was like, well, she is 44, but then I'm like, wait a minute, I'm 42, and I know what I can do with the sword. And it just... I don't know. You're probably right. Ultimately,
yeah. I still contend, the first fight between her and Morgana in The Mandalorian was pretty good.
Yeah,
it wasn't like the best lightsaber fight ever, but it was still pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So I still contend, the capabilities there. It's just for whatever reason not hitting its potential.
Yeah. I don't know. Overall, I like the action, but I feel like, and I said this in previous TIE Fighter Renegades. One of my biggest issues with this show is I think calling it Star Wars Ahsoka was a fail. This should not have been called Star Wars Ahsoka. Because Ahsoka wasn't even the best part of this in any stretch.
Yeah,
let me ask.
It's the same Boba Fett problem where literally the best episode of the season was the one that Ahsoka was hardly in it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. So In fact, let me ask you this question. Let's go down this road. I mean, we made it clear that this is still great. You know, like you and I have made this clear already. But let me ask you this question: who would you say is who's your kind of your MVP, your top character in this series?
Ooh,
I'm pretty sure Ahsoka didn't come to mind.
I mean, as much as I want her to be.
Yeah. I mean, and we love the character. Let's not make any mistake here.
I mean, that's tough. If we had gotten more of Ezra, Ezra would definitely be a contender for that.
Yep.
But he just wasn't in it enough.
Yep.
I'm tempted to give it to Hu Yang.
Wow. Well, that's a great choice. No, I agree. Like, I love I forget the name of the YouTube channel where they do like these retro trailers.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, we're like, he's the most valuable droid in the entire universe, and now he's been relegated to ship repairman.
He's 25,000 years old. And David Tennant was amazing as the voice of Hu Yang.
Yes.
And Hu Yang, you're completely right. A great character. Really brought everything together. Was a part of most of the great moments. Not all, but most of the great moments in this. I'm with you on that. Do you want to defend that choice a little more?
The other contender is obviously, Ray Stevenson's Balin Skull.
Yes, yeah.
But he's just here again. He's kind of by the end of it, he's got the same problems Ezra does. He's just not in it enough.
Or we're not given answers anyway.
Yeah.
Of what are the motivations?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was basically missing in action the last episode.
Yes.
That's a huge mistake.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, my answer is what you just said. Like Balin Skull, really Balin and Shin, like if I can double it, like Balin and Shin were my favorites.
Yeah.
But, like you said, even their stories I felt fell apart in 7 and 8.
What do you like about Shin? Because I'm not really like getting a whole lot from her.
So Shin is not good on her own.
No.
Shin is good.
And that's what I'm kind of afraid of going forward is she is not going to be able to carry as the opposition on her own.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't like. I thought that ending, and which may speak to that there were changes made because of the unfortunate demise of Ray Stevenson. That changes were made there for her character.
Right.
I thought, like, I did not get the sense at all that the direction those characters were going was that they were going to split up. She was going to go on her path, and that he was going to go on his.
Yeah. In fact, I even recall telling you my sort of impression of where that character was going is that she was going to end up being sacrificed by Balin.
Right.
To whatever, to the Mortis gods or whatever it is, that power that he was seeking. His plan was to basically sacrifice her in order to achieve the power he was seeking.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. Like, he says, was it an episode or in part 6, where he says to her, "I trained you to be something more."
Exactly.
Okay, all you got to do to make Shin a great character. What the fuck is that more? Like,
well, that's what I thought it was. Literally, if he had a purpose in training or something, then he had plans for her.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Like, the whole time I'm watching it, and part of what engaged me about this, and hey, people can say what they want. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to say it. This is my opinion, not Rob's. Okay. Like, I was actually kind of wondering if there wasn't some kind of romantic tension, even between the two.
Okay.
Between the two characters. I understand where people could have problems with that. I get you. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. We don't even really know the ages of the characters anyway.
No. And well, I mean, we know that Balin was around during the Clone Wars, so it makes him pretty damn old.
Well, true, but then, like, okay, how old is Shin? I don't know how old the actress is, whatever, but this show really upended our understanding of training in the Force. For example, why didn't Yoda initially approve of Anakin Skywalker getting trained?
Because he was too old.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the age of Ahsoka's Padawan in this show? That being, Sabine Wren. She's like 30.
Yeah, I was going to say she's got to be in her mid to early 30s.
Yeah, she's 30 or so.
Yeah.
And so, so 9 years old is too old.
Yeah.
But then, but we can train a 30-year-old.
Yeah, but I mean, Ahsoka's no Jedi.
Well, that's fair. But I'm just saying that but neither is Baylan Skoll.
No.
And
they both readily, or at least in the past, have readily admitted that.
Right, exactly. So, this idea that a Padawan has to be some super young person is no longer a necessity within Force training.
Yeah, I mean, like when they eventually do this, Jedi Academy movie or whatever it is they're going to be doing with Daisy Ridley.
Yeah.
You're going to have students that are of all ages.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I think that movie, especially after seeing this, I think that's going to be a mistake.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was the general consensus when it was announced.
Yeah. Because just pay attention what people are getting excited about, and none of it has to do with anything sequel trilogy related.
But for everything that we've seen so far, all of the plans that they have for post sequel trilogy content have eventually dissolved. And
right.
Speaking, mainly of the Rian Johnson,
right,
trilogy.
Yes.
That never materialized,
and probably never will,
if we're lucky.
Yeah, if we're lucky. Yes, agreed. So, what did you think of? Let me ask you this: what did you think? Because the character that didn't come to mind, and like you said, but it's because you didn't get enough. I mean, what did you think of Ezra overall in Ahsoka?
I thought he was great. I thought
the actor delivered.
Yeah, he was one of the stand-up roles in the whole show.
Sure, yeah. All right, I want to explore this a little bit. So, in fact, I misspoke in the last Fighter Renegades that I did. So I brought up, I thought it was cool that he didn't have a lightsaber. And
yes.
He basically said, no, I don't need one. And I was like, oh, okay, nice. And what it reminded me of instantly was the new Jedi Order books from the old EU, where Anakin Solo, in last episode I said Ben Skywalker. I completely screwed up the character, or I jumbled the names, but there was a Ben Skywalker in the old EU
right,
as well.
There was.
So that's why I misspoke. But Anakin Solo, who was the third child of Leia and Han Solo, had a very unique perspective on the Force. He thought, no, the Force should do everything. We don't need technology. I don't even need a lightsaber, even though he would eventually have a lightsaber, and it would actually be a very important lightsaber in the Yuuzhan Vong War. It would lead to Jason becoming Darth Caedus. But anyway.
Right.
But I loved his perspective that, no, I'm so fucking powerful, and the Force can do everything. I don't need to train. I don't need to do any of this shit. The Force can do it all. And I thought that was really cool. I mean, he would train still, but anyway. And I was wondering if, because, another point that I think we can make about this is, sure, they might have changed some of the names, but in a very real way, we ended up with, this is the Heir to the Empire trilogy.
Yeah.
Like Baylan Skoll is effectively Jorah C'baoth.
Yeah. And Ziono is Boris Fela.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. He's just human instead of Bothan.
Right.
Yeah. Sure, we don't have Winter. We don't have some of these other characters, though maybe Hera would be.
Yeah, I was going to say we have Hera. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really, there's very much a lot of this is really the Heir to the Empire trilogy.
Yes.
Just with different names and slightly different places and all this. So, and I'm trying to think of where the hell I was going with that. But anyway.
Well, I mean, it goes to something I mentioned before. Is Filoni will take things from the EU and recontextualize them. Yeah,
absolutely. I forgot exactly where I was going with that, but regardless. So talking about Anakin Solo. For Filoni to borrow from the old EU, I mean, he's been doing that his whole career, especially with Disney.
Right.
So, in fact, we know he originally was going to bring the Yuuzhan Vong into the Clone Wars.
Yeah, and Darth
TV
Revan.
show. Yes. Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, anyway, I thought maybe he was, pulling from the philosophy of Anakin Solo with Ezra. But then he gives Ezra a lightsaber. And, it's nice that it's partly related to Kanan.
Right.
But I thought that sucked. I love the character of Ezra. I thought it was asinine that he shows up in a stormtrooper outfit. I'm going to land on a New Republic capital ship wearing stormtrooper armor. What a great idea. To be fair,
the character can be kind of a dumbass, and he has been known to like wear stormtrooper armor a lot in Rebels.
That's true. That's true. He is kind of a himbo, isn't he?
Yeah. He is.
Well, but here's
because I mean, if I was Ezra and having these conversations with Sabine about, hey, what's going on back home, and she's being like really coy and avoidant about it, I'd be like, no, come on, fucking tell me what's going on right fucking now.
Yes, that was poor writing. That was bullshit. Like, you can't carry that for episodes.
The way he just kind of, lets her brush her off, I'm like, no, bullshit.
Yeah, like, oh, no, I want to know. Like, did the Empire get defeated? Like, what, because, look, I've been out here for over a decade. Could you tell me what's going on? That was crazy. But here's the thing, and I'm kind of wondering, now, speculate responsibly. And in fact, I don't even really see the point of speculating anymore, because even like you were talking about with what happened with Ray Stevenson, they will change plans on a dime. And sometimes I think Disney will even change plans just to fuck with the fans, just because for some reason they enjoy that. They have some twisted sense of these things, or at least Rian Johnson did. But anyway, it's interesting that Ezra's name is Ezra. And a part of me wonders if Filoni had this in mind from the very beginning of creating that character. Because we know what happens, so I'm just speculating here. We know what happens to the first Jedi temple that Luke builds. Mm-hmm. It goes up in flames. Mm-hmm. What I think would be a mistake is if you have Daisy Ridley, come in as Rey and build the second temple. Because Filoni's been having a lot of fun in this show with biblical allegory. And
I was just going to say, that is a really loaded term.
Yeah. So, but for Ezra to build the second temple would be perfect, because the second temple in, my people's history, in Jewish history, was built by none other than Ezra.
Right.
And so I think that would be dynamite. And if Filoni played that long game, I mean, slow clap, golf clap for that shit.
I definitely think he's capable of doing it. I mean, certainly, we know he can and has done stuff. I mean, nobody thought that the Purgle were anything other than a filler episode when they first appeared in Rebels.
Right. Yeah, and now, they're one of the most important creatures in the universe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was a really long game to play.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true. And talk about biblical illusion, of course,
Jonah and the Whale.
Yeah, which I brought up, and even how Tolkien wrote the book, or translated the Book of Jonah in the New Jerusalem Bible, which I brought up in a previous episode.
Yep.
So there's a lot of that going on here, which I think is great. I love that. I thought it was interesting that they have a character named Enoch in it, even though my theory of what was going on there seems to have been proven wrong. Just that I was wondering, because we were wondering for a while, for a few episodes there, if the Night Troopers were even alive, or were they all resurrected by the Night Sisters? And
well, it seems to be a mixed answer.
It could be, but
because obviously the the stormtroopers that they sent against Ahsoka, Ezra, and Sabine were alive when they started out, but then were resurrected after they got taken out.
Right.
But the Death Troopers, that faced off with Sabine, Ahsoka near the end of the episode, it's pretty obvious those guys have been dead for a while.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I was kind of wondering. It's like, okay, so, and I think I think people were picking. I hadn't heard anybody else really pull on this, but. The idea that maybe all the other stormtroopers, or at least the ones that had the red wrapping, might have been resurrected. But Enoch was the only one that really talked, and was basically, it's because he's the one that never died, which is just like the character of Enoch in the Book of Genesis. Is he never died, he was taken.
Even though he did have kind of like a similar crimson color underneath his armor.
Yes, yeah. Well, essentially, I think we found out that, no, this resurrection thing wasn't necessarily happening.
Well, it was
because they get green eyes and stuff at the time, but
yeah. But like I said, the Death Troopers, when they smashed their helmets off, they were
dead.
They've been dead for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
So that some of that was going on, but it wasn't like, I don't think it's a blanket statement to say like all of the stormtroopers with the red wrapping were all resurrected.
Yeah.
No, obviously most of them were probably alive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think hopefully we get more of Enoch. He is a cool-looking character. I feel like Filoni's sort of pulling a Captain Phasma here. And in the end, we ultimately got nothing out of Captain Phasma other than maybe a decent novel.
Right.
So I hope we get more, and we do have a legit badass underneath that armor.
Yep.
What was his name? Amos.
Yep.
From which is
The Expanse.
From The Expanse.
Yep.
Now that's not the actor's
Yep.
name, but also I think it's funny that it's in. Here
he's-
comes. Go ahead.
He's that guy.
Yeah, he's that guy, big boy, and I think it's ironic. Filoni has been pulling in, sci-fi royalty, what I call, for some time. In his shows, be it Mandalorian, whatever. Claudia Black.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
this.
we didn't even notice that until like a couple episodes later. I'm like, holy shit,
Yeah,
it is
it's
her.
Claudia Black. But having a guy who the main thing he's known for, aside from the Escape Room 3, or Escape Plan 3 with Stallone. Anyway, don't remind me. Aside from that, was playing a character named Amos, which again is another name of a book of the Bible, another biblical character. I thought was maybe another level deep. Interesting that he's just given biblical names in his main roles, so who knows what's behind that? But regardless, interesting stuff. So yeah, I hope to see more of that, more of him in the future, and some meaning behind what he's doing. I guess that ultimately leads us to Thrawn. Rob, what are your thoughts on Thrawn's presentation?
It was far more subdued than what I was either expecting or hoping for. It was definitely not up to his performance in Rebels,
Right.
which was kind of a step down from the depiction of the character in the original EU Thrawn trilogy.
Yes. Yeah. I already made in previous TIE Fighter Renegades, I made comments about his physical appearance that didn't really live up to his physicality.
But I kind of agreed with you, time, but I also have to acknowledge that technically the character is 70 years old now.
Okay, that's a fair point to bring up. That's a very fair point to bring up. A part of me, now a little bit time removed away from the show being finished, from Ahsoka, or the season anyway, being finished, a part of me feels like, oh no, we're getting another uber powerful character deconstructed by Disney. And, which is exactly what happened to Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
And a part of me feels really disappointed by that. I get it why Thrawn had to be what he was in what is technically labeled a kid's show, which Rebels was. Technically. It wasn't, but technically. Okay. Just because in America, anything that's not live action is for children.
I know. I fucking hate that.
Yes.
But,
yeah, this is the only place in the world where anyone thinks like that.
I think that attitude's going to go away once the boomers are gone.
Yeah. Yeah, give it another 10 years, 20 years, folks, and animation will be treated as seriously as anything else.
Right.
But anyway, I get why Thrawn was treated that way there, and you have more episodic television and everything. This was not that situation. This was the time for him to fucking shine. You needed to show people why he's a threat. You need to show people why Hera just says Thrawn's coming, and why that's enough, to get it. And you didn't.
Yeah.
And, as much as I think Thrawn is the greatest character in Star Wars history, which really has more to do with the old EU than anything new, as much as I, want to say that, I can admit it, he's not as a big a deal as Darth Vader, as to where if Darth Vader's coming, yes, everybody on the planet knows that that's a problem. Everybody on Earth knows that that's a problem.
In the Thrawn trilogy, I kind of feel like he almost was a Darth Vader. I mean, he was, by the end of it...
Oh, totally.
That big of a deal. That's scary.
I'm just saying he doesn't have the same cultural cachet.
For sure. Yeah, you're talking meta. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. No, he came out badder than the Emperor, in my opinion, in the Heir to the Empire. He was really something.
Yeah, he was dangerous.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Maybe the greatest threat.
And then the whole thing was he's kind of like the Batman of the Star Wars universe, because he's dangerous without superpowers.
No, right, exactly. And what is Batman other than Sherlock Holmes?
Right.
With a cape.
Yes.
Okay, right.
And that's what Thrawn is.
Right, Thrawn is Sherlock Holmes in space.
Yeah.
And again, look, yeah, Holmes can get bested here and there. Like, okay, yep, the Bendu fucked you up. That makes sense, right? The one in the middle got you. Okay. But, I mean, this just wasn't the time. and it's not, I don't even think this is a matter of what I want. I'm just saying what's good for the fucking story. Like, this was and the...
There were two, for me, huge mistakes with him. And they're both interrelated. Both him sort of kind of like justifying his losses as victories.
Yeah.
I think that was a mistake.
Yeah.
Two, Morgan Elsbeth like straight up questions his decision making.
Mm-hmm.
No way that would have ever fucking flied in the EU.
Oh yeah. Get the hell off of my bridge.
Yeah. And well,
even,
the thing is Thrawn inspired the kind of confidence, whereas that would never even happen.
Yes.
To begin with, nobody would even think to question his competency.
Yeah, even in the new canon, this happened where someone questioned him too much. Out, like you're gone. You're working wherever, and yeah, that was weird. And you could say, oh well, he, like you mentioned, he's older, he's aged, whatever. Yeah, but you see, that leads to a whole other problem. What has he been doing there this whole time?
Yeah,
you know?
there's a guy on YouTube I watch called Generation Tech.
Okay.
His content, it's hit or miss. But it's mostly pretty good. But he kind of puts forth the idea that basically we're seeing a diminished Thrawn just because he's been stuck on this planet for 10 years. Which to me is a cop-out.
It's so unbelievable. We're talking about a guy who trains with Dark Troopers.
Yeah.
Against them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying with them. I'm saying against them. It just doesn't make any sense. Man, I don't know. And even the tattered uniform, I just feel like Thrawn wouldn't fly with it. Like he just wouldn't go for it. And what, you don't have enough supplies on the Star Destroyer? Like, it just there's a lot of decisions made here that I feel there's something behind them, and I don't know what it is, and I don't like it. But that's all I can really say on it.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I definitely do. And here again, I've tried to put my finger on the two things that I can point out that are obvious to me that were a problem. But overall, yes, there is a sense that something's off.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to another character, I suppose. Sabine. How did you feel about Sabine Wren throughout this season?
It would have been fine if she was just somebody we're picking up with right after Rebels. Mm-hmm. But it seems like she hasn't grown at all.
Yeah. And I can admit it's a little weird to have like a 30-year-old that's basically acting like a
16-year-old.
Yeah. That's, I don't know. I mean, this is a larger problem in Hollywood today. When you and I were growing up, when we're like 6-7 years old, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, because we're close to the same age. When we're growing up, we're watching Captain Kirk. We're watching adults. We're watching adults being adults kicking ass. Mm-hmm. Okay. As to where today, kids are watching kids being kids and doing whatever the hell they do, and it's always muted because you can't have violence, which hey, I'm not a proponent of.
Or sex.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I think that there's a natural, dare I say, there's a certain natural evolution for a human being to grow up.
Yeah.
And we live in a stunted civilization in some ways. I mean, and hey, people could throw this right back at us.
Yeah.
They could throw it right back at us because here we are, we're in our 40s and we're talking about Star Wars. But at the same time, I could back against that because great Star Wars for me wasn't even necessarily. I mean, the original trilogy is great, but it wasn't even that. Great Star Wars for me was what we talked about, Heir to the Empire trilogy, Timothy Zahn, and that was adult as fuck. Those books were 400 pages.
The reason that it doesn't fly, like, for me, is yes, I think there's a degree of infantilization in our society today.
Yeah.
But you know what? The stakes aren't as high as they are for us as they are in for the characters in Star Wars.
Well, that's a fair point. Yeah. I mean, so like with Sabine, I was disappointed. Like, I mean, it was cool. Like, hey, I'm more than happy to see Clancy Brown at any point. For him to come in as mayor or whatever, governor of Lothal, right? For him to be, he was in the first episode. That was great. My impression from the end of Rebels was that Sabine was basically governor of Lothal. Like, she was the leader, and she had grown up.
Yeah, right. That was the impression you got, was that she was definitely a very much more mature character than where she started out in season 1.
Yes.
Whereas here, like I said, it kind of seemed like her development got stunted, and she maybe even regressed a little.
Right.
Well, I love that she retained some of her sass.
Yeah.
Because I love that about the character.
Same. Yeah.
But at the same time, she's not serious.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I say this, her being basically my top character in Rebels of the main cast. Like, I mean, she was my favorite. I mean, you're even kind enough to give me a Lego Sabine figure, so. And it's just, I don't know. Like, I get it. I dig it. I don't have so much of a problem with we can talk about the Force and what changed here with the Force in the show. I don't have so much issues with her training and everything, but like the way the character acted, I don't know. At the end of the season, I'm just like, what the fuck?
The only rationalization I have this, and it's a fair rationalization, is that the kind of trauma that she went through with the destruction of her homeworld and her family can stunt somebody's development, for sure.
It can. Yeah, that's fair. It can. I guess I would just expect the character to become more like Bo-Katan than a 16-year-old, because Bo-Katan became very jaded out of it all.
Right. But, Sabine just didn't only lose her family, but she, like her mentor basically abandoned her because she thought she was going to go dark side.
Yeah. Yeah, which was interesting to get that reasoning. I think there was another writing fail, in my opinion. That conversation should not have been between, or that nugget of info, that shouldn't have been discovered by a conversation between Ezra and Hu Yang.
Right.
That should have been a conversation, that should have been a yelling match of some kind.
Yeah.
Between Ahsoka and Sabine herself.
Yeah.
And I think we were robbed of that. Of that powerful moment.
Because there's still no closure between the two characters.
Right.
Neither one of them has really processed what happened.
Yeah, because now I'm feeling like, did they not do that because the actress playing Sabine can't be a fucking adult? Like, and I don't know, and I don't want to insult anybody.
Yeah. No, it's. Here again, I think this is one of those situations where like speculation might be pointless.
Yeah. Fair. That's fair. So, I don't know, I wasn't terribly pleased in the end. In the beginning, her being, kind of reminding us of who Sabine is, fine. But, like, this character didn't grow up at all.
Yeah.
Didn't evolve
at all.
And
I know that's hard for you to say, because I remember Sabine was your favorite character from season 1 of Rebels.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying, yeah. So, yeah, it's disappointing. Especially when she has every reason to be a very serious, very grown-up character after what happened, with the Purge of Mandalore. Oh well,
Yeah.
Let's talk about let's shift it up a little bit. Let's talk about really who I think was outside of Baylan and Shin, a real show stealer here. That being none other than Hayden Christensen, really reclaiming his throne as Anakin Skywalker. Yeah. I've said my piece on it. I want to hear you talk about how did you feel, especially with Part 5. How the hell did you feel about that?
Like if we had just gotten this show with his performance in this show without what we'd seen in Obi-Wan, I would say it was looked like he it was like getting right back on a bike and riding again. He didn't skip a beat.
Nope.
He didn't miss anything. Like, he was totally in character.
Yes.
And he embodies that character fully.
Yes. And I think this showed just how great an actor. I mean, I've already seen plenty of movies that showed how great an actor Hayden Christensen is, but this showed it. Like, he was good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
I still, one of the best moments, and that's what I want to kind of end cap with on all of this, is like, what were the best moments of the show? We're laying out some negatives here, but overall we still loved it. And what some of the best moments were. But I mean, I'll tell you, like, one of the best moments is just when Ahsoka and Anakin are fighting kind of for the last time there in the world between worlds, and he just responds with, or like Ahsoka gives her response to his question, and he just says, "Incorrect."
Yeah.
It was so dark.
Well, that was the shifting between the light and the dark was so fucking brilliant.
Exactly.
I mean, that even the way that the denouement of that fight, where like Ahsoka disarms him and they're face to face, and he's got the glowing red eyes, and you just kind of see the dark side drain out of him.
Yes. Yeah. His ability, that's why I say his acting prowess, because his ability to shift from a Darth Vader we barely saw, other than when he's like lobbing limbs on Mustafar in Revenge of the Sith, before he becomes the armored Darth Vader, for him to switch between that and really the very boyish charm, was incredible to watch.
This was a continuation of a connective tissue that was first, in my opinion, laid down in the Twilight of the Apprentice and Star Wars Rebel, where we see Ahsoka and Vader face off. Yes. Because up until that moment, I kind of had trouble squaring the circle of Darth Vader and Anakin be the same person. Yep. They've built on that. Yep. I think that where I was finally able to close that loop and accept them began with that episode in Rebels, and this is kind of like the fulfillment of it. Yeah, I agree. So, do you have more comments on Anakin in this? No. Okay. So, let me ask you this. Saying if we get a season 2, and like I said, I think there's a bit of a tacit admission that there is going to be, based upon language on social media, but that could all change in a heartbeat. Right. Okay. If there is to be a season 2, do you think Anakin Skywalker will be in it? Absolutely, especially the way they ended with his Force Ghost appearing on Peridea. Yes, right. Filoni doesn't do that shit by accident. Yeah. And now this... I mean, I'll straight out say it. Filoni isn't just doing Heir to the Empire. He's doing Heir to the Empire plus George Lucas's sequel trilogy plus Colin Trevorrow's Duel of the Fates. Yes. And he's bringing all those together and synthesizing it into one story. Yeah, and perhaps the largest part, that if the script that we got was actually the leaked script for Episode 9 of Trevorrow's for the sequel trilogy. Yeah, the Duel of the Fates. The Duel of the Fates, where everybody can basically access the Force at the end of that. That was the end of that script. That is what we're being told in this. Yes. And that is... While George Lucas has said that in the past, I know there's a lot of people who take issues with this. I agree with your statement there about what you said. I want to touch more on Anakin in a second, but I want to ask you about this. How do you feel about some of the changes? And I think they really are changes, or at least finally it's set in stone about how the Force works. I still kind of want to push back on calling it changes. Just because, like you've already mentioned, this has been discussed by the creator already. Yes. Yeah. I can understand if a lot of people haven't seen those interviews, don't know about that. But, it comes from the horse's mouth. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So you don't even really see them as changes. Like, you think it's cool that basically anybody with enough time and training can have some degree of Force ability. Yeah. I do think that there is an element of natural aptitude among certain individuals. Yep, talent plays a part, like Ahsoka said. Yeah, right, exactly. And I've always thought that. And at the same time, other people are born with, and I don't mean, anything pejorative or ableist about this, but some people are born with handicaps which they cannot do certain things. Right. One of those may be accessing the Force. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fair. Myself, I don't know. I think I always enjoyed. I don't want to. Well, enjoyed is a strong term. I don't want to use the word enjoyed. I think I've run through my Star Wars fandom, which has been going on for almost 40 years. Okay, that there are people who can use the Force that are special, and then there are people who cannot. Like, one of the coolest things for me, like in the 90s, and this is before Disney took over, was the idea that if you're not Force sensitive, you can't handle a lightsaber. You're going to end up cutting your own hand off because it's such a precise, elegant weapon that, you know, the average person can't handle it.
And we still see that.
Well,
in The Mandalorian.
Yes.
I mean, Din Djarin practically cuts his leg off.
Well, right. That's fair. But still, like, that notion was sort of thrown out. But what was amazing back in the old EU was when suddenly, you know, in the comics, Boba Fett pulls out a lightsaber on Luke Skywalker, and you go, whoa, Boba Fett is so bad. He is such a badass. He can handle a lightsaber. No Force abilities whatsoever. And so, you know, like, I feel like you lose some specialness with these characters.
Yeah, but you also lose the elitism.
Well, that's fair. And maybe that is the better message to get out there.
And this is not a new idea. You mentioned too, is you know, like the very first Star Wars MMO we got, you know, being a Jedi was democratized.
Yes.
Anybody could do it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's true. That's very true. What was it?
Star Wars Galaxies.
Galaxies, thank you. Yes.
A lot of people, that was very controversial at the time too.
Yeah.
I will admit that.
Yeah, well, a lot of people said, like, well, of course, everybody's going to fucking pick a Jedi, so this is going to be a boring universe.
Right. Right, but which even that didn't turn out to be true.
No, it was actually a great game. Yeah. I you know, it's Star Wars, and they play fast and loose with any kind of consistency, ultimately. I'm not saying continuity, I'm saying consistency, meaning the rules of physics don't apply, you know, most of the time.
Right.
You know, science is not a part of the Star Wars universe in any way, shape, or form.
But I mean, it's not to the degree of some other. It was interesting because I was just reading an article, oddly enough, about all things about The Simpsons, because they're toying with the idea of characters aging again.
Okay.
And you know, there's been stuff in the past where like it's a question not whether or not Homer grew up in the '60s or in the '90s.
Right.
And like, you know, they interviewed some of the writers, and one of them said, you know, like, yeah, we have an elastic canon where we'll do anything if it's for the sake of the joke.
Yeah, right.
So it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But I think that is becoming a common thing amongst many different franchises where they're all moving towards a more elastic canon, or at the very least using the quote, you know, unreliable narrator as a crutch.
Yeah, or they just pull out the ugly word multiverse, which also has no scientific basis. So, and no, it does not, folks. Come and get me. I will take you on in a heartbeat on that one. But I guess I feel like if everybody has access to the Force, like, then the whole fucking galaxy should be, well, maybe this is true, because the whole galaxy is shit in Star Wars. Like you yourself have famously said this, that I would not want to live in the Star Wars galaxy.
Fuck no!
Yeah, right.
Fuck no!
And you know what? Maybe it's because everybody does have access to the Force, because everybody's fucking dark side. Like, everybody's fucking, or, you know, okay, people are not inherently evil, but
I mean, this is...
I feel like the bad outweighs the good in the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it does in our universe too, unfortunately.
Well, but that's my point, right?
Yeah,
that's my point, is that everything should just be bad and dark and whatever.
I know,
and
it makes this is what upsets me so fucking much about New Trek.
Oh yeah,
that it's gone dark, and
yeah,
you know,
I don't
like,
live
I'm
in that.
Sorry, no, this is not why anybody watches Star Trek.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I don't want to live in Discovery. I don't want to live in the Picard era. I don't want to live on Strange New Worlds because I'm going to have to sing all the goddamn time. I don't, you know, in Lower Decks, give me a break. So, you know, I'll pass. Anyway, yeah, I'm with you. So, I'm okay with it. It's fine. And George Lucas said it, so I'll run with it. But I do feel like there's something lost in this, you know, in this being, like, now set in stone. But that's all I got.
I mean, it's the. I mean, like, you know, it's. So, like I said, they are getting rid of the elitism.
Yeah.
There is a trade-off there. I mean, I think it would be fair for both of us to say that we have a certain degree of fascination or obsession with the elitist elements in cultures, whether it be secret societies
Sure.
or occultism,
Sure.
any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's an element of just coolness
Yes.
about that.
Yes.
That came along with that was the same sort of element that existed in being a Force user or a Jedi or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you know, the Jedi were very elitist,
Yeah.
and that's, I would argue, was their downfall.
I agree. Yeah. No, I agree.
And they deserved to go down.
Yeah. No, oh, yes. No, they needed to. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
That was
So-
from the inside.
So, I mean, you know, the lesson has been learned.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Palpatine didn't defeat the Jedi; they defeated themselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
He just
And Yoda knew
accelerated
to do
it. Yeah.
I mean, you know, the last point I'll make on this, and that's a fair point of you to make. The last point I'll make on this is, even within the story of Thrawn in the new canon, like with the Chiss, none of them are really. There are very specific members of the Chiss species who are actually called Skywalkers.
Right.
Which Thrawn is, you know, notes the irony on that in the books. When he meets Anakin. But, like, they're very clear that there is a differentiation. Like, okay, no, I mean, this is what doesn't make sense, is that if the Chiss knew that anybody can access the Force, they wouldn't have made such a big deal about the Skywalkers. Like it just, there's just, I feel like it is a change. And I mean, okay, good. Let's get the rules set down. That's fine. Okay, but something's off there.
Well, here again, it could be, yes. It definitely is a change from what a lot of people perceived about Star Wars, both in and out of universe. I think it's perfectly, you know, cogent to say that even most people within the Star Wars universe thinks that's how the Force works.
Yes.
Is that
right.
only certain people can do it, and it's a
Right.
very elitist and special thing.
Right.
So the idea of, you know, people using the Force, you know, sort of being, like I said, democratized, I don't think that's a common belief within the Star Wars universe.
That's fair. That's fair. And you know, like, is there clarity around how the Force works in the Star Wars universe? No. Like, we know that from
No.
how Han Solo reacts to it in A New
And
Hope.
that's the way it is in our world with a lot of these things with, you know, very
Oh,
secret
sure.
societies. There's lots of things that they do and believe that they think make them special, but
Right.
really anybody can have access to that information.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're completely right about that. Yeah, that's fair. So I think we can leave it at that. It's just like, okay, that's how it is now. You know, and we know it. And all right, as long as we stick with that rule. I want to get into, we'll start wrapping this up. I want to get into, and you can bring up any other points you want to get in at any time. But I think we need to talk about the ending. Okay. And I guess I'll start off, first off. I mean, you could give me a general feeling of how you feel about how it ended, how, like, the last 5 minutes, you know, how that went. Like, we basically have Ahsoka and Sabine stuck in this other galaxy. And, like, how do you feel about that?
You know, I have less of a problem than what I've seen people react to.
Yeah.
I'm basically with Ahsoka. They're where they need to be right now.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, okay.
I've said from the beginning that I hope that they stay in that galaxy for a while, because there's literally a whole universe of stories, new stories
Right.
to tell. And we've only been on one planet
Yes.
in an entire galaxy.
Yeah.
What the hell else is out there?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And tremendous stories could happen there. And I'm with you on that. Like, I'm fine with that. It does become a lot more interesting when suddenly we see Balin standing on in a very Lord of the Rings moment.
Yeah, standing on the
Okay.
Argonath.
Right, yeah. Where he's standing on a statue of the father.
Yeah.
The son is next to him, and the daughter, a headless daughter. Of course,
Yep.
we did see the daughter fly in, as an owl.
Yeah, Morai.
Morai. We got the Mortis gods, and we have that Trinity has returned.
Something I didn't notice, and I don't know if you saw it either.
Go ahead.
It had to be pointed out to me. But when Balin is looking off into the distance, there is a signal going
Yes.
off on top of the mountain there
Yes.
that I didn't catch on the first viewing.
Right. Yeah. It took me a second viewing to catch that as well. Yeah. It's just like a glint.
Yeah,
It's,
and here again, it almost feels like another, Lord of the Ring reference. Gondor calls for aid.
Yeah. Right. And this isn't look. If we're clarifying how the Force works, okay, I'm fine with it. Even if it doesn't feel totally consistent to me, okay, fine. Yes, let's finally get some fucking answers, some straight answers on what the Mortis gods are all about. Of course, referencing the Mortis trilogy from the Clone Wars, which is probably the 3 best episodes of that series.
No doubt. Yeah.
So the interesting thing to me is that, and it was a great moment. Whether that was the original part of the plan, I don't know. Like you said, with Ray Stevenson's demise, that might not be the case. Regardless, we're there. Anakin Skywalker is there, and Anakin Skywalker, apparently his, bringing balance to the Force, his destiny was to take the place of the Father. Or at least that's what the Mortis trilogy from Clone Wars heavily insinuates.
Yes.
Okay? Or even straight says. So Anakin's there, Force Ghost Anakin, but he's there, and suddenly you have the Mortis gods. I think we could end up with some pretty amazing stories throughout all of that. Again, predictions could get thrown out the window, but how do you feel about this overall?
It's one thing, is kind of like I want the mystery explained.
Yes.
But so often in any genre, once you open the mystery box, it stops being interesting.
Yeah, I hear that.
But that being said, I think that there's some, significant symbology going off in those statues. I think the daughter's headless because she's literally dead.
Right.
I can imagine that statue crumbling the moment she died in the Clone Wars.
Right.
It was kind of implied that the father died too, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
Because then all that would be left was the brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder if that Mount Rushmore needs another head, and if it's going to be Ahsoka. And I could see a moment where Anakin says, you're better than me because you actually chose this destiny, to do that. And that could explain why, where is Ahsoka in the sequel trilogy? Where is she in the time of Rey? Where is she? She obviously, she was terrified of Thrawn coming, so why would she turn her back on all these threats to the galaxy? Well, it's because she's not exactly corporeal anymore, and she is part of the Mortis gods now.
Right. For all we know, Anakin is too.
Right.
And that's the whole thing. Balin's goal, as much as we can discern from his words, is that he wants to break the cycle.
Yeah.
And we can all acknowledge that, following the Mortis trilogy, the balance of the entire universe basically came undone.
Yes. Right.
And the dark side has been dominant ever since.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're right. So it was quite a tease to leave people off with. I guess pulling it all together, I do see where people make the criticism that you had to have a lot of knowledge of previous works to understand what the hell's going on in this show.
Yeah, it's definitely getting to that point where it's
right.
becoming unavoidable, and I think a long enough timeline that becomes necessary.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and it's becoming quite an ask. My thought has always been, though, like, too bad. Yeah, I mean, that's just my, like,
right.
Okay,
well,
so you don't know, then you don't know.
Yeah, that's because we're the hardcore sweaties.
Right.
I mean,
right.
But the thing is like, here again, on a long enough timeline, it kind of has to be inevitable because you can't ignore us forever.
Yeah, exactly.
They tried to do that with the sequel trilogy, and look how that turned out.
Right. Yeah, so, yeah, I think appeasing fans, like, even with the smallest things, I think is a winner. I don't know. I mean, it could just add to more mystery for people, and they might really like that. But, ultimately, one of my biggest problems with this season is that we got so many great threads lined up, but we didn't really get any answers, like, to a lot of this stuff. And I really feel like there should have been more payoff.
Yeah.
We should have, like, they should have said so much more about what Balin and Shin are, like what Balin's really about. And maybe they originally planned that. I don't know. But
that's just my feeling. I really do think that's the case. That there was more there.
Yeah.
And either they realized they had a problem, when Ray Stevenson passed away, and say, hey, like, this is completely upset our plans for the future. We're going to have to, like, rework it in order to, like, rework some of what we have and use it later on or whatever.
Yeah. I think ultimately, I mean, I want to know more about what Thrawn was doing. I have lots of these kinds of questions. I really would have liked, while we're getting tacit admissions, again, of how the Force works, or not explicit, not tacit, let's say, know what, there are gray Jedi, there are dark Jedi, there are, like just say it. And because to some degree I want it to piss some people off, because there's a lot of people who hate those ideas, and
people inside of Lucasfilm.
Yeah, right. And I'm like, well, too bad. It's another situation of too bad.
Right.
This is a big universe.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Be real.
I agree because the some of those people that have those opinions in Lucasfilm are, kind of my opinion, kind of assholes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So
I'm not going to name names, but
sure.
I'm sure a lot of you can figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I think the show is implicitly saying that there are gray Jedi. It's because Ahsoka's wearing gray before she's Ahsoka the White. Anyway,
I mean, we had that in Rebels. Bendu was the one in the middle. Like,
right.
How can you get more explicit than that?
Which, boy, I hope we get more of him. Yeah, no, you're totally right. And Balin, he's literally wearing armor and in black. Like, I mean, and he has an orange lightsaber. He is a dark Jedi. Like, and I just, because he even says, like, no, I love the idea of it, and that it lost its way and everything. And so it's not like he was exactly anti-Jedi. He just had an affinity in a different, kind of interpretation.
Yeah, and you can't argue that he's, like an anti-hero either, because, no, he straight up kills people in the first episode.
Yeah, right. He's an anti-villain. I agree. So, yeah, I just wish they would have said it outright. Like, let's make the goddamn statements already. Even though I think implicitly, yes, Filoni is saying there are gray Jedi, there are dark Jedi. There are, these are things that exist. So anyway, speaking on that, best moments of the show, like maybe give a top 2, top 3. I could get started if you want.
Sure, go for it.
Okay. I mean, I'm definitely going to say, first off, like, just Anakin Skywalker was amazing in this, and his ability to turn light to dark so quickly and like that, and the lines that were said in the World Between Worlds were dynamite. Like when he said, when Ahsoka said, I won't fight you, and he just responds, I've heard that before. Yeah. Fuck, man.
And I'm sorry, that line alone proves this isn't in Ahsoka's head.
No, right. That was Anakin. That was the World Between Worlds. Yeah, I agree, because that's the only way that happened in Return of the Jedi. Ahsoka was not there. It's the only way that reference makes any sense, is because that's really Anakin Skywalker.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was just tops for me. After that, I mean, I guess I'll leave it to like a top 2. I thought that in my opinion, just the amount of like pull-ins and references to other franchises really won me over. From even just from pulling from the Bible, pulling from Lord of the Rings, I think once again, and I say once again, Filoni pulling from Dune heavily, which I really think he did. I mean, he pulled from a lot of mythology, the Three Fates, you know, and all this other stuff with the Night Sisters and everything. That was great. But like, I even felt like the little flyer, the little ship that, like, kind of like shuttle thing that Morgana had. This gold. Ship, looked exactly like the ornithopter from Dune.
Yes,
like from David Lynch's Dune. And I said, I was like, no way, like that is that's a reference.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah,
it was very cool.
Right, and I mean, this isn't like I said, this isn't the first time Filoni pulled from Dune. I thought in Mando season 2, when we finally got to see the Krayt dragon.
Yeah, that was sandworm.
It was a sandworm. It was purposely designed to look like a sandworm. And in fact,
I really hope that Brian Herbert was fuming in his pants when he saw that. I hope he did a full-on fucking liquid shit.
Yes.
And soiled himself.
Yes. Yeah, and this is like. And it's okay. And pulling all the Lord of the Rings shit, that's okay. That's what I want. That's what I love about Star Wars. Star Wars, like we said, it's the ultimate sandbox. It's the ultimate remix. It brings everything together, you know, from all these disparate franchises. You know, Stargate did the same thing with SG-1 and so on, where they would constantly reference directly or pull stuff from, you know, from other science fiction. Great. Yeah. You know, like it's all, science fiction, at least for me, growing up, was one big happy family.
Yep.
You know, it's like, I mean, yeah, you know, there was always Star Trek versus Star Wars, but really it was one big happy family where we're all sci-fi fans.
Like, while I knew people that picked sides in that, everybody watched both.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Everybody watched both.
Exactly. And so, you know, to bring it all in, to have that one place where it can all come together, I think that's great. Like,
it is. And that's
that.
what I love about, you know, Filoni's direction with the whole thing, because he is so good about synthesizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess, all right, I'll pick a third. I thought Hera was amazing in this.
Yes, Space Mom rules.
Yeah, Space Mom rules, and also, you know, big kudos to Mon Mothma, who is quickly becoming one of the best characters in Star Wars.
Yeah, I still think she was stronger in Andor, but I agree with you.
Yeah. No, yeah, I understand that. But, you know, I just love that they're really taking advantage of this character, who, as I've said over and over again, is politically the antithesis to Palpatine. We should know why this character is in charge of the Rebel Alliance. Like that gravitas should be there. Yeah. And Genevieve O'Reilly is bringing it every time. Yeah. So I dig that. All right, how about you? Top 3.
I definitely agree with your first pick. In fact, that may be my number 1.
Yeah, it was too good.
Yeah.
Too good.
My other big moment is, and not just a specific moment, but overall everything with the Night Sisters on Peridia was great.
Yep.
I think the whole Dathomir sequence in the Clone Wars was like some of the strongest episodes of that series.
Yes, I agree.
And to have a return of that was great. Even having, you know, the reference in the Sword of Talzin.
Yep, that was cool.
Brilliant.
Which was the same blade that Mother Talzin actually used.
Yes, exactly. Right. And that they were somehow able to, like, you know, conjure this thing from wherever it resided.
Yeah, that was cool. I agree.
That was, it was great. Yeah, I'd say those would be my 2.
Yeah. I mean, it's still, like, let's be honest. As much as they may have fumbled Thrawn a bit, it is still awesome to finally have him in live action.
Yeah, I will say, like, you know, the introduction of Thrawn, where, you know, the
seeing the Chimera and everything.
Yeah, and seeing the Stormtroopers, Thrawn.
Yeah.
That was, I mean...
that was great.
That was cool.
Yes,
yeah,
that was really great.
But, yeah, still the top for me is just the whole episode, The World Between Worlds, all of that. Not just Anakin, but everything that happened.
Yes.
Within that was just spot on, perfect. What I basically come to Dave Filoni for.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, someone who understands the prequels so well. And I still stand by my point that I feel like the show is really that amalgamation of the prequel style and the original trilogy style. Like, this is really episode 1, 2, and 3 mixed in with Return of the Jedi.
Yep.
And it really works for me. And even, like, I think even to the point of the direction and the writing, like, people complain about the dialogue with the prequels, but there was a point to that. Like George Lucas really was super intentional in how, you know, I've talked about it, how like how Anakin would talk in the prequels. Everybody's like, oh, they don't let Hayden Christensen act. It's like, no, he's doing great. That's how he's supposed to act, because there's supposed to be continuity between how he sounds as Anakin and how he sounds as Darth Vader. So Anakin kind of has to talk like Darth Vader would eventually, you know? And I think Filoni nailed that in this. That's why that moment that I talked about earlier where he's like, incorrect, you know, that perfect. Like that's exactly what Vader would say, you know?
But it's the same thing Anakin would have said too.
Yes, right.
I mean, that comes straight out of like that whole sequence where he's basically giving, you know, Ahsoka Order 66 training during the Clone Wars.
Right. Yeah, bingo.
You know, and it's like, oh, you think that's training? You know, sparring off against some you know, those ball droid things, you know, target drones or whatever you want to call them. You think that's training? No, let me show you training. Incorrect.
Yeah, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. So, you know, this is a situation, I think, where the good very much outweighs the bad with this show.
Yes.
And that's really why, I mean, I still put it next to Andor. It's, and maybe Rogue One. I don't know. Like, this is the top three, you know, and Rebels is great, of course. But, I mean, this is Rebels Season 5.
Yeah, I guess Rebels is Disney content.
Yeah.
I have to put that up there, too. Yeah, I
mean...
I even put Rebels above Mandalorian, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. I still... They should have titled this Rebels. Like, and it still would have worked because... I mean, even in the marketing, you could have really had a winner where, you know, where Hera says, you know, hey, once a rebel, always a rebel.
I think the marketing people at Disney probably had a problem with that.
Yeah. Well, it could have worked. But, yeah, I mean, I agree. You're not going to get new viewers if they think they have to go watch 4 seasons of something else.
Exactly.
And I understand that.
Exactly.
I mean, my counterpoint to that is, yeah, but they didn't shy away from Clone Wars Season 7, you know, but, oh well. Yeah. So, again, in the end, more good than bad.
I mean, you know, Clone Wars Season 7 definitely felt very much like a mea culpa by Disney.
Yeah.
In order to get, you know, everything that they wanted out of Dave Filoni.
Yeah, right.
Oh, you want me to do this now?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to finish this thing I started a while back.
Yeah.
Before you guys were even around.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well, again, if there's no season 2, we riot. So there it is. And because we need to know about the Mortis gods. No, and for plenty of other reasons. Yeah, overall, I think a fantastic show. I mean, the more time I spend away from it and the more I rewatch, except for episodes or part 5 and 6, which are still just some of the best Star Wars, just cut it out and like that, phenomenal. The less I kind of like it, and I hate that I feel that way, and so ultimately I'm just going to say they need to, and I don't care where they do it. They can do it in comic books, they can do it in novels, they can do it wherever they have to do it. Especially since you have the writer's strike and so many other things going on right now. Like, here's your chance, Disney. Take the books and comics seriously for a little while.
It's one of those things where if you don't get closure, it's just simply unacceptable.
Yeah.
I'm still holding a grudge over the way Dark Angel ended.
Yeah,
back in the 90s.
Right.
You know,
right,
like,
totally.
Yeah, because they're leaving it basically in the same place.
Yeah. And you can't leave shit like that. You can't. God, don't remind me. God damn it. You know, and the next thing you're going to say is, oh, in the Stargate Atlantis movie. You're like,
right, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
You know, I recently found out why some of this stuff never happened. And some of the reasons that these things, the way they went down, where we get early cancellation or a project would stop or whatever, are some of the dumbest fucking reasons in the world. Stargate Atlantis entirely had to do with the fact that the DVD market died. And I don't even know exactly how that died at the time, but because it was supposed to be direct to video, and you know, you had Continuum and you had Arc of Truth, and I guess they didn't perform well, and it seemed like this, you know, for a while, people don't remember because everything's streaming now. But for a while,
Well, it's related.
you're right. But
I'll tell you exactly why the DVD market died.
Well,
It was
because of streaming?
No, not because of streaming. Before Netflix was streaming,
Yeah.
Netflix was a DVD service.
yeah.
People didn't have to buy DVDs anymore.
Oh, there it is. This is why I come to Rob's museum. Yes, there it is. I was like, because I was thinking about this earlier. I was talking to Ellen, actually. And I mean, my wife and I, we have breakfast together and we talk about all kinds of epic things. And I was saying this to her earlier today, and I was like, but I don't get it. Like, streaming wasn't a thing yet. So what the hell killed the DVD market?
Netflix
but
was.
there it is.
Yeah.
It was Netflix.
Yeah.
So, but people don't get it, is that before streaming and you had to worry about these shows doing great on a streaming service, it was DVD. Like, direct to DVD was such a provocative or lucrative and like cost effective way of getting content out there.
And it wasn't just a thing for the big studios either.
No.
It was also the most direct connection that an independent filmmaker had to an audience.
Right. Yeah. And so to some degree, with streaming services, we're able to get this kind of content again, like shit that would have never gotten made before. But we're in an ugly time now where Piper's got to get paid. And look, running stuff on servers ain't cheap, and I mean, shows and movies are getting delisted all the time, even ones that are owned by the fucking company that does the streaming. And so, I'm worried. I'm a little worried that there's a chance we won't get a season 2 of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I can't lie, put this entirely at the feet of the studios either, or even Netflix, because solutions have been offered to the ISPs,
right,
to help alleviate or solve these problems.
Yeah.
And the ISPs have flat out denied any solutions coming from the content providers.
Yeah.
And as much as I think they're all engaging in some level of bullshit, that's got to be the highest order of bullshit there is.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, we talked last time you and I were together doing TIE Fighter Renegades, a few episodes ago. We talked about what if Apple bought Disney or even bought up Star Wars or something like that. Speaking of things that got canceled or that ended, canceled is the word, because then they had to make a movie to finish it up, and we've referenced it multiple times throughout this show, throughout this episode we've been recording. I never knew this. There was going to be a Stargate's SG-1 season 11, but it wasn't going to be on the Sci-Fi Channel. One of the main execs, I'm going to guess Phil Schiller, though I don't know, one of the main execs at Apple loved the show so fucking much. He said, here, we'll foot the bill. It's going to get released on iTunes and iTunes alone, and you guys can do whatever you want. I just want the show to go on. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out. I think like Glassner and those guys, or whoever, Brad Wright and Cooper or whatever, because Jonathan Glassner was out at that point. I think they basically said, no, we're doing great with the Sci-Fi Channel. We don't need to do this. We don't need to go that route.
Yeah, that's always a problem with these things, that there's always so many fingers in the pie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's truly amazing what happened with The Expanse, and that we even got that continued for another 2 seasons.
Well, I think that's what happened there, is because we know Bezos is a hardcore sci-fi fan.
Yeah.
It's why he started Amazon in the first place, was to get sci-fi books out there.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's even in a Star Trek movie, by his choice. Right.
He wanted to adapt The Expanse from the start.
Yes.
Like if sci-fi had not gotten the rights before him, he was going to do it.
Yeah. So these tech billionaires will do these things as passion projects, and to some degree, as much as fuck these people, it might be our best chance of getting of even getting what we want out of our franchises, And so I wouldn't be surprised at this stage if, like you said earlier in this episode, that really this could be Disney setting things up to get sold off, and that's why they're not making announcements for what's going to happen with Ahsoka and whatever else.
You know what? I can't help but to think, what if, all these different, media conglomerates, Disney, Apple, whoever, instead of spending huge sums of money buying up other content providers, why didn't they go out and start buying ISPs?
Oh, like internet service providers?
Yes.
they've got to know that the money's not there. Like,
yeah, but their business model is so reliant on it.
yeah.
How much easier would it have been to basically have, what do they call that in business, where they have like complete control of their supply chain?
Oh, well, like a monopsony of sorts?
No,
or,
not a monopsony, but where they basically, they do everything from mining the ores to processing it into material into making the final product.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm not sure of the term, but I get what you're going.
Yeah, right. I mean, that exists.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could get into this. Could be a long conversation.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just
Yeah.
speculating how much easier it would have been for
Mm-hmm.
them to make money if they, like I said, if they had control of the entire process.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting.
And I'm not saying that's what they should have happened. I'm not
Right.
saying that's
It's a
even
good
a
thing.
good thing.
Yeah.
Because fuck, centralization.
Yes, right.
I'm not for that.
Same.
I'm just saying it's kind of weird that they didn't.
Yeah. I mean, so NBC, Comcast, AT&T kind of pointed in that direction, I think, and maybe they figured that, because you're right. It does seem like an obvious bad idea, right? like it's obvious, and I say bad idea because that's usually what these people implement. So it seems like an obvious bad idea, and it is interesting that they never did it. I wonder if they look at like what AT&T tried to do, like the AT&T Comcast / NBC kind of merger, and maybe they said, oh, no, it wasn't financially viable.
Yeah,
I don't know.
well, I mean, I have an insight into that because I used to work for AT&T, and I can tell you AT&T's problem is that they're just incompetent.
Oh yeah. No,
They always
totally
have been.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Google and Apple, when you look at like Project Loon and you look at like the multi-peer connectivity framework for Apple, I think they were both looking at, we don't need ISPs.
Yeah, they were trying to circumvent it.
They were trying to circumvent it. And Amazon even just recently launched their Starlink competitor.
Right.
Where they're going to have, satellite internet. So it looks like maybe they realized that they need the power of ISPs, or they need what ISPs provide. They need that last mile.
Right.
Direct to consumer last mile. But the ISPs themselves are not profitable. And so they're trying to circumvent the whole thing. So they're still trying to do what you're saying, but they're just doing it in a different way.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, and the thing that doesn't make sense about the ISPs not being profitable, because they were already being subsidized from the beginning.
Yeah.
Which is so ridiculous when the CEO, this was quite, infamous many years ago, the CEO of AT&T was saying, no, those are our pipes.
Right.
We're going to do with them as we please.
Right.
The content providers aren't going to dictate to us how we run our business.
Yeah.
Even though we rely on their content to even have a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like every mile of fiber and optic cable running through the country has been subsidized by the government.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, we're definitely getting into a huge conversation.
Yeah, we are. I'm just, I'm sorry. This is just something I have
no.
Inside knowledge on.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you on it. I mean, because this is getting into look, the internet itself is not sustainable. And I know you've heard my theories on this.
Yeah.
That, people aren't, so many of these streaming services are already skyrocketing their prices. Some of them almost doubling the price per month of what these streaming services cost. This, it's not a sustainable model in and of itself.
Yeah, but I mean,
and it's not because of the last mile.
What does that even mean? Because this is why a lot of reasons why utilities were created, because it wasn't seen as profitable or sustainable to have an electric grid. So it had to be,
right,
subsidized or partially owned by the government. I mean, big shock. Maybe capitalism doesn't fucking work.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. So I know I know we have a huge, shall we say, free market segment of the audience, and
yeah, but that's not what we have anyway. So.
No, we don't have that. But I'll be the first to say that no, I really don't think we'd have plumbing, in like if you have everybody acting off of,
ask the people in Detroit if they have plumbing.
Yeah, right. I mean, just look at X, and when I say X, I mean Twitter.
The artist formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah. Okay. Just look at this. It doesn't make any money, but it's one of the most popular, or it has been one of the most popular things ever, on the fucking internet. Until recently, right? But that's because the new owner was trying to make money off of it. I mean, there's arguments that can be made that the real thing he was buying, what he really wanted to do was buy a large user base. He didn't want to buy a social media.
I don't think that was it. I really think he bought it to destroy it.
Well, yeah. I mean, separate conversation.
Yeah, I know. We actually had this conversation before.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think there's a good argument for it because you can see what he is doing, what patents he's filing for related to X. He wanted to destroy a social media network, but I think there's a very good argument.
He wanted to destroy that social media network, specifically that one.
Yeah, and for reasons that you can disagree with, but understand in that, and I do disagree with them. But journalists were becoming superstars because of Twitter. This was a thing that was happening, and I can say this. You were inside AT&T. I'm inside the PR industry. I know.
Yeah.
And that's not the case anymore. I know the interaction that you have with journalists on these platforms is no longer what it was just a couple of years ago, even. And the worst thing that can happen to any corporatist structure, and that includes government, corporations, go down the list. The worst thing that can happen is that journalists, people who write for the news, have a platform of their own, and that's effectively what they had. And so for him to want to kill it because he doesn't want people ripping on him, I can believe it.
This is a war that's actually been in progress for quite some time because journalists did used to have a platform of their own. It was called local news.
Yeah, right. Which died because of the internet.
Yes.
And totally.
Well, and because big news outlets have been actually trying to kill it.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Intentionally.
Right. And I don't think people understand. It's no. There is no danger to free speech. There is a danger to journalism. There is a danger to the news, to the truth.
Yep.
That's what's threatened, not free speech. No one gives a rat's fucking ass. I mean, the shit that you and I can say behind these mics all the time, free speech isn't in danger for nothing.
No.
Okay? The only thing that ever gets taken down is because, ooh, dear, I used John Williams music somewhere or something like that. No way. It's free speech isn't the issue. What is getting killed off is the truth. And yeah, I think that Elon, was part of his plan.
Oh, sure.
For sure. And, I think there's a fair argument to be made that he wants a WeChat style app. He wants that super app that everybody uses, and that everything kind of gets built off of. And he bought a user base of a few 100 million people when he bought Twitter. So anyway, all these people want to circumvent ISPs, that's for sure. And yeah, whether it's going through the telcos or what, and of course, Elon, what else does he happen to own? Oh, he happens to own Starlink. He has his own internet that he can even use to weaponize against nation states.
And
has, right. So anyway, what does all of this have to do with Star Wars? Well, let me tell you.
Are we talking about the Reagan Star Wars or?
Yeah, right. It actually has a lot to do with Star Wars when we're talking about the defense program.
Yes.
But yeah, so he opened up GPS satellites. So, all right. Anyway, what does this have to do with Star Wars? Streaming services are not tenable. The future of Star Wars is very much open to. I think it's tenuous. I think, honestly, it's very tenuous. As good as this was, I don't think it's saving Star Wars. I don't think it's getting a bunch of people to subscribe to Disney Plus.
Yeah. I don't think it's ruining Star Wars either.
No, it's not ruining. And that's a win.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of Star Wars that's come out that has ruined Star Wars.
Because if the worst thing that happens is that we get another Dark Age in Star Wars, fine.
Right.
It didn't kill Star Wars before,
Yep.
and we got out of it from after, that ending.
Yeah, right.
Was the greatest moments in Star Wars history.
Yeah, exactly. So, the future's going to tell. But we have the Acolyte coming up. But
Skeleton
Crew as well. Yeah, that are pretty much finished. But beyond that, we're honestly waiting years on anything else as far as live action and even, I suppose, animated. So the place to look would be, I guess, the novels and comics. But admittedly, in my own opinion, a lot of those haven't been the greatest lately. Some have been great.
I wouldn't know. I haven't been following.
You're right. Well, I don't blame you. So, I don't know.
Although I did see they announced a new novel having to do with the Inquisitor, the Jedi becoming Inquisitors, which does look interesting.
Oh, Red Blade?
Yeah.
Oh, that novel. Actually, that novel's great. I read it.
It's already come out.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm looking forward to buying that once I get another credit on Audible.
No, it's a great read because it trashes the Jedi. Just
nice.
Trashes them.
Yeah, that's the impression that I got.
Right.
I was like, yes.
In an accurate way.
We need this perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the ending, it's not a perfect book, but it's a very good book for the exploration of the character of, I keep forgetting her name. It sounds like a mix between Judas Iscariot and Icarus, and I think that's on purpose. So, I think they did that as... Anyway, it kind of gives you a glimpse into what is the path of this character. But it's a very grown-up book. It talks a lot about mental health.
Yeah, good. Because, if it's on par with, Dooku Jedi Lost, that's great. We need more of that.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I really, really enjoyed that book. And again, its arguments against the Jedi are the same arguments that, Barriss Offee, and which Barriss Offee was right, hashtag, and Ahsoka would have. This character goes in a different direction, and it works. So yeah, definitely. And I'm surprised because it was written by Delilah S. Dawson, I think, who I have not been super impressed with as an author. She wrote the Ahsoka book.
Which was
It was Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
All of her work has been And so I was surprised that this was that good. But regardless. So definitely something to check out as far as recent stuff that has come out. But a lot of the extraneous Star Wars material I've not been super impressed with. For a little while there, I was really impressed with it. I love what they're doing with Crimson Dawn and some other things, but we'll see. This might be the area that Disney has to focus on for the next couple of years because they don't have any other choice.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see with how they, feed us with the content they do have finished.
Right.
Are they going to delay Skeleton Crew or the Acolyte in order to, prolong?
Just to have... They're going to kind of tease it out like mana.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hear that. Maybe. We'll see. But I'll admit I'm super excited for Acolyte. I'm digging a show about the dark side. I'm there for it.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I know there have been some concerning comments from the creators.
Well, there's been concerning comments from the beginning because there was a lot of whispers from the start that this was kind of Kathleen Kennedy's pet project, and people have very negative opinions about her. Obviously.
Yeah.
I've not necessarily always shared them. I get it. I think you're placing the blame on the wrong person again, but I understand.
Yeah. Don't look at Iger. Sorry, did I say that out loud? All right. Very quick. Last question. Do you think the James Mangold movie is going to happen?
Ooh, the Prime Jedi movie?
Or like the Dawn of the Jedi.
Yeah. I hope it does.
You hope it still does? Do you think it's still going to happen?
I've thought that Star Wars has needed that for quite a while now.
Yeah, I agree. I've heard other commentators say this, that basically what Star Wars needs to do is
Although if they're not going to tie it in with what Filoni's doing, then don't waste your time.
Yeah, but they might be setting that up with Peridia.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If they tie it in with, if the story group does its fucking job.
Yeah, right.
Then I'm all for it.
Yeah. I think they need to, and not High Republic, they need to pick an era very far away, either far away in the past or super far away in the future. Take your pick.
Yeah.
And then just do that.
Yeah.
And
I want Dawn of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Like the comics that Dark Horse did back in the day. And even those weren't perfect, but they were still awesome. Yeah,
they had their problems, but it was still good.
Yeah. It added positively to the lore of the Jedi.
Yes. Yeah.
And I even, I have my own ideas about that. I've showed Brian. I'm still not done with it.
Yep. It's good shit. I'll tell people that.
There's so much you could do.
Yeah.
And I really do feel that Filoni is moving in that direction.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we're getting set up for a Dawn of the Jedi story just by going to Peridia.
Yes.
As well as, and we didn't get into this, but that's fine. We'll see what happens in the future, including some allusions to the Zepho. Not just allusions, but direct reference, perhaps.
Yes.
To the Zepho. Within Ahsoka itself.
Which is amazing if you think about it. Like, I'm really curious who came up with who was the genesis of the idea of the Zepho?
Oh, I'm wondering if Filoni walked into...
Exactly, yes.
I think he could have walked into EA and said, this is how you're going to do it.
And which, if that was the case, then, that is like the most brilliant, masterful, long game plan I've ever seen in any franchise ever.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. And we know Filoni pays attention to the games. Why? Because he references 1313 all the time.
Right, he's a nerd like us. He plays the fucking games.
Well, yeah, I mean, Dark Troopers are a core part of all of his content. Yes. What is that from? It's Dark Forces.
Yep.
So,
I mean, Kanan Jarrus is Kyle Katarn. I'm sorry, but he is.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So, well, okay. We're going to see what happens, how this all shakes out, and it's going to be amazing if the Zepho really become a thing. I mean, they're already canon, but like if they really become a major part of the story, or if that becomes part of the Dawn of the Jedi, I don't know. So really, like, I'm feeling pretty good about Star Wars right now. I'm just not sure about what the future for it looks like as far as things getting made, not so much the quality.
Right, and I would say I'm concerned but not worried, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because someone will pick up the baton.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'd like even if, like I said, even if this leads to another Dark Age in Star Wars, that just means the fandom repossesses Star Wars.
Yes.
Like we had in the past.
Yeah.
And the folks writing the RPG books get to go back to doing whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, right on.
Which would be amazing.
Yep, I agree. All right, so we're leaving with a small glimmer of the word we don't ever want to say, nor does Dr. Shelley Afra ever want to hear, hope. We're leaving with just a little bit on that, and that's certainly what I think Ahsoka left us with. Just a little bit of hope that, wow, good shit's on the way. But we'll see.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap this one up. Rob, again, always a pleasure, and it was great to do it, just inspired by the Museum of Antiquities and Oddities that is your home. So we'll wrap this one up, and we will see all of you on the other side.